everybody, it's Mark again, and I hope that you're enjoying my videos. I hope that you're learning things. But today we're going to work on something besides a cuckoo clock. And I have over 400 clocks in my house, and as I said before, I'm the person that repairs them. And so I can repair other than cuckoo clocks. So let's get started. This clock is an Ansonia clock. It has what is known as a Brocot or open escapement. And what I like about these escapements is you can see whether or not the clock is running by looking at the face of the clock. You know, all the other clocks that you have sitting on the shelf without the Brocot escapements, you have to either listen to them or turn them around or wait for the hands to turn, etc. And so the clock does run. It's just that the strike mechanism is messed up. And I worked on this clock a long time ago, and what I remember is the lever that goes into the count wheel, I believe it broke, and I think I tried to modify it. Anyway, I think that's what happened, but I never finished working on the clock. So out of me collecting clocks for 25 years, this is the only one that I've seen with a bird dog. And whether he's got a dove or a pigeon or what, I don't know, in his mouth. But this is a marble style clock. And it needs cleaned up, but anyway, we're gonna take this movement out and work on it. And as you can see, it's got marble in it. It's not metal. It's marble. It's rock. Black slate. And when I was over in England, one of my British friends told me back in the late 1800s, when they came out with slate clocks, that America couldn't get slate that easily, so they would make clocks look like they were slate in material. And I know a lot of people would disagree with that statement that I just said, but this looks like a slate clock to me. I've seen several slate clocks in this design, but it's not. It's wood. It was made by WML Gilbert Incorporation. And I don't quite remember the procedures I did for taking this movement out, so we're going to go with your basic steps. Taking the hands off. And then it's got these nuts right here, and I'm going to take those off to take this wood plate off and see what happens after I take that wood plate off. It should have little feet on it, but it doesn't. That could be simple. You could put stuff in there to make little feet. Now the base is off, which holds the gong. You can see you can see all the slate in this thing, and these nuts are screwed on to so far to determine how far this goes on, and that goes on to so far determine how far this gong needs to go up in order to hit the hammer to hit it. So the next step I'm going to do is take the bezel off, I believe. All three screws out, you're going to have to either glue or tape these washers, these spacers, down to the slate, because you have to go through, you have to hold the movement up in the air, you got to put that bezel in place, you got to put the screws in place. It might be easier just to take some Scotch tape or Aleene's. That's what I think I'm going to do when I go to put it back, is put some Aleene's glue on these washers, spacers. That way I don't have trouble putting the movement back in. And with the all the screws out, you slide the movement out through the bottom. And as you can see, this spring is about undone, and that's because, let me put it on a stand and show you what's going on. I think the timing is off. But stand by. As you can see, it doesn't want to shut off. The lever going into the count wheel, it doesn't want to shut off. There's some things that have to happen to make that lever shut off, and so I'm gonna let the spring run down. I don't know if I want to take this movement apart. After all, it's a Brocot escapement, which a lot of people are scared of the Brocot escapements. But 2 screws right here to take this part off, 2 screws right here to take this part off, and there are some jewels in the Brocot escapements. It's been a long time. The movement looks rather clean. You know, it hasn't been used because of this thing right here. And I don't remember exactly what it was. I thought that this broke and I redid it, but it might have been on another clock. It's hard to keep up when you have over 400 clocks. And that's why I tell people all the time, do not do what I did. Have something manageable. 100 clocks. With 100 clocks, you could service 1 clock every 3 days, and in 365 days, you got 65 days left over to help you out in servicing those 100 clocks. When you got 400 clocks, you have to service almost 2 a day. It's over 1 a day. Okay, so anyway, it's not easily managed, is what I'm getting at. Especially when health takes over, life takes over. So anyway, I'm gonna let the spring down and see what I need to do next. After further investigation on this, I've figured out what the problem is. I just got to figure out how to fix the problem. This wheel here isn't rotating. And this wheel has to rotate in order for the clock to shut off, because if not, the lever is going into the short notches. It needs to go into a deep notch in order for... There are 2 pins on this wheel here. These pins hit a lever. Let me get something better to point with. There are 2 pins on this wheel right here. One here and then one 180 degrees, which is right here. When this lever goes into one of those deeper slots, when I move this wire here up, you see it's also moving this lever. So these pins have to catch that wire, that bent over wire right there. But it can't catch those pins as long as this is in a shallow spot. If I was to bend that, which I don't really want to do, because if you bend wires too much, it will break. And there, with me bending it, the lever fell into the notches of this cam, and these wires here are probably when it goes into warning. Sorry. So now it's not striking anymore, but the reason why it was continued striking is, watch this. This wheel is not connected properly. Doesn't have the right tension on it. So now I have to figure out how to put the right tension on it. So now that means I'm going to take the movement apart. So just like Just Mike says, and I say, and everybody else says, prior to working on a clock, a car, whatever you're working on, pictures are your friend. So take pictures all the way around. Verify your pictures. Verify that you could see your pictures. I cannot stress that enough. There's been several times when I've taken pictures and then I download the pictures to my computer, ready to put the thing back together, and I look at my pictures and I can't see what I want to see in my pictures. So verify your pictures after you take them. Take twice the amount of pictures, 3 times the amount of pictures. You can always delete pictures. Pictures will save your butt when you can't remember what to do. So now I'm going to take pictures. Before you work on a movement, you have to let the power down. Before you take a movement apart, you have to let the power down. It doesn't matter whether you're working on a weight-driven clock or a spring-driven clock. You have to let the power down. With the spring-driven clock, weight-driven clock, you can get by with it. With the spring-driven clock, you're going to get hurt if you don't let the power down. So what I did was wind up the spring, and you can see the Brocot escapement working when I tilt it right. I put a zip tie around. Now there's a post here that stops the spring from going too far, and there's a post here that stops the spring from going too far. And so you want to make sure that when you put your zip tie or your clamp or your wire, whatever you use, I'm using zip ties, they're easy. You want to make sure that you only grab a hold of the spring. And then with a key and your letdown tool, whether you have a homemade letdown tool or a store-bought one, you let down the spring into the spring itself. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this on camera, but right here is the click. I just wanted to point that out to you. Right here's the click. When I put some pressure on the spring, there, I can do it there. When I put pressure on the spring, give you some light in the situation here. I'm going to be able to move this click, and then I'm going to be able to release the spring down by slowly letting my homemade tool release in my hand. There's also I got 2 notches in this thing. I was using the wrong notch. There's also a spring on top of that click that you can move that spring out of the way, and that's what I'm going to do next, is move that spring out of the way, and that way you can move the click, and you should be able to see that the spring is out of the way. And the spring is being contained in the zip tie. See, no pressure left on this. There might be some pressure just from the movement being in place for a long time, but for the most part, the pressure is gone. So I can, I have to do the same thing to the strike side now, and I'm going to do that off camera. It was a little bit more difficult to do because it's constantly shutting off. Sorry, it's constantly striking. Even when I held this thing into place, and by the time I got the zip tie and everything ready, it came out of place. And so I'm going to let the strike side release into the zip tie on its own. Y'all liking this video? Give me a thumbs up. Leave me some comments. This clock will be for sale when I'm done. I'm not going to sell my clocks for cheap. This is the only clock I've seen like this, and I think it's worth quite a bit of money. We'll discuss the price after I get it up and running. And as you take it apart, take pictures. I took a picture after I took these screws off with the part in my hand. And so take pictures as you take the thing apart. That way you know how to put it back together. I could take things apart really easily, but my memory sucks because I don't pay attention. I mention this book all the time, Harry S. Lorraine, who says, in order to remember what is being said, or remember what you read, or basically remember what you do, you have to pay attention. And I don't pay attention when I'm taking things apart because I want to take it apart really quickly. And so that's why pictures are your friend. I gotta take the spring off. Before I could take that part off. And where did these parts go? There is where they went. I could have looked at my pictures. But anyway, I'm going to continue taking this thing apart. In order to take the escapement off, I have to take the spring off, and then the escapement will slide out. Now that I have the suspension spring and pendulum assembly off, I can pull this up and maneuver it down this area, and that comes off. To put it back in, you just do the opposite of what you did. And so that was pretty simple. In order to take this off, though, the other wheel is in the way. So I have to loosen up all these nuts and take parts off. And again, you want to take pictures, because as I turn the thing around, these little suspension units, compression washers, were falling off, and I needed to take a picture to figure out how they went on. Did they go in that way, or did they go in that way? And so that's why you want to take pictures or a video as you take things apart. I got the 4 nuts off, and I'm going to try to lift the plates up and to see if I can take a picture of everything that's down. That way I can put it back together. But if there's any pressure whatsoever on the springs, wheels are going to go flying. So you go slow to relieve the rest of the pressure. And hopefully I could get this off to take another picture. This section right here is stopping me. It shouldn't. This is what speeds up and slows down your clock with the double-sided key. And it should come out on its own, but it's not. So I'm just going to see if I can take it apart here. There we go. And now I could take another picture straight down on it. Not only did I take a picture straight down on it, but I took it at different angles, because there's things that you're not going to be able to see straight down on it. So taking it at different angles should help you out. The first thing I'm going to take out is the hammer. And as you can see, the hammer goes into this position right here, and there's a bent 90-degree wire that puts it into a notch that's on the plate. But what you have to pay attention is where this wire goes. And so you want to make sure that everything is put on properly and that you take it off properly. And this wasn't put on properly. Whoever worked on this thing last, and it wasn't me, I've never taken this thing apart before. The spring for the gong was not, for the hammer, was not put on properly to make it work properly. So we're going to start with the, I guess, the strike side. Fan. This is a great wheel, or the first wheel, second wheel, third wheel. The fourth wheel is the wheel that has the pin on it, which is normally the third wheel with warning pin and a cuckoo clock. But in this case, there's 2 pins on this wheel. Probably one for warning and one to stop. And then, like I said, we got the third wheel. And the third wheel has got this lever here that goes into the third wheel. this lever here is the one that's going to hit one of those 2 pins on the fourth wheel. And then this lever here goes into the count wheel. Second wheel, and then the great wheel. If I could get the great wheel off. I'm going to go to that great wheel last. And you want to put all your parts in a container, especially if you have a mess on your table like I do. And this has got excess oil on it. So we're going to try to clean this up. This lever right here, I'm not for sure at the top of my head what it is for. I'm going to say it has something to do with the strike, but I don't know. And that might be what, when I put this thing all back together, what stops me from doing what I wanted to do. Does it go on top like this? You have to understand that there's wheels that are going to be in the way. I think it's going to go on the bottom like this, and it's just going to go in this section right here. Because you see all those holes? There's going to be levers that's going to stop it. So you have to figure out where it goes. So I think it goes right like that. Maybe my pictures will show part of it. I don't know. So time side. Time side, we got first wheel, second wheel. The second wheel is being a pain in the butt. It don't want to come out. So let's go onto this wheel. And now let's see if we can get the second wheel out. Still being a pain in the butt. It don't want to come out until I take the great wheel off. This finally came out, and I want to show you where it goes. The escapement wheel goes into that bridge section right there. Just like that. Hopefully you can see that. Escapement wheel, the wheel that I'm pulling out, goes into the pivot that's on this bridge right here. This is called a bridge. And so once I put it in that pivot, that's where it goes. So I have to get the great wheels off, and hopefully I can do that. And I'm going to try to do that off camera. And before I take the great wheels off, I took a picture because I want to see where these wheels went. You see the spring goes around the wheel, and it's attached to the post like this. So it goes around the wheel to the right, and it attaches to the post like this on this wheel, which would have been the time side. On the strike side, I'm pretty sure that's time side. Anyway, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Anyway, on this side, the spring goes around counterclockwise and attaches to the post. So that's why you want to get pictures. I got the springs off. I took a picture of this, exactly like I took a picture like this, and I took a picture like this. That way I know that it goes on there, and that's where it goes. So I got the springs off, got all the wheels off. It's time to put the parts in my ultrasonic cleaner and clean them off after I rub most of the gunk off with some rags. Spray away glass cleaner to the glass, semi-chrome to the bezel, and then Renaissance wax afterwards. That way it doesn't, you don't leave fingerprints. Using Google Lens, I took my picture and put it in Google Lens, and all these images came up. Here's one. It has a dog on it. I'd have to log in. I'm not going to do that. But it's not the same as my clock. My clock's got an open escapement. Here's one that has a dog on it. That's what sucks about Google Lens, is you have to create accounts and all this stuff, and I don't want to create an account. But so far, there's not one exactly like my clock. There's some similar, but they're not like my clock. Just the bookends here sold for $249.50 on those. These sold for $600, or maybe they're asking $600 for it. But mine is a clock, and I'm gonna have to probably sign into some of this stuff in order for me to come up with a fair price as to my clock. Okay, I got the movement all cleaned up, put it back together, but still have to figure out why it's not working. Let me take this back off so I can show you something. Anyway, the clip, I straightened that out. It has nothing to do with it, but I straightened it out. You know, there are two separate wheels here, and that's where the second wheel comes into play, the strike side second wheel. This top gear here, this top gear here, it catches the strike side great wheel, and this bottom gear here catches the count wheel. And the reason why the count wheel wasn't moving is because this bottom gear here is turning on the shaft. And when you put it together, which I'm fixing to do, when you put it together, the bottom gear is touching the plates. So actually the bottom gear needs to be raised up some. You should be able to see that the bottom gear is touching the plates. And so once I push the bottom gear up some, it should be tight enough that it doesn't move. So now I have to push the bottom gear up. This block of wood has saved my butt more than I can count. Just trying to find something that fits over this pivot and that I could use to use the block of wood to push that bottom gear up once I hit on the pivot. And I think I got something right here that I took out of my watch stake kit. Hopefully I don't break it. It has moved some, but I want to move it some more. And I can still easily turn that. So I'm probably going to have to use some of that thread Loctite that I bought from eBay that came from China. You know, I told you my local machinist said this stuff is good, and it'll glue. I could use super glue on it, but I don't want this gear moving, and that is why the count wheel wouldn't move, because this gear is slipping on its shaft. But let's see if I have the gear down far enough that it's no longer resting on the plate. It is no longer resting on the plate, but it's not exactly where I want it in alignment with this count wheel. So I'm going to make it go down some more. As you can see there, it's down on the shaft more where it needs to be, and now it's in alignment with the count wheel. So I'm happy with that. You see the gap between the gear and the plate, where before that gear was resting on the plate. And so so now I need to figure out how to prevent this thing from moving, and it might not move that way, but I'm still going to put some of that red Loctite on this because I don't want it to move. There's a movement alone on eBay selling for $260. Has been serviced and cleaned, plus shipping, $17. So $277 just for the movement. Of course, that was for sale items. Here's one. I mean, sold items. Here's one that sold for $69 basically, but I don't know whether it's been serviced or not, or whether it's the same movement as the one I have. Doesn't give me enough data. It looks similar to it, so you can always request. Doesn't mean you're going to get it. But here's one that sold for $123 basically. Here's an Ansonia clock that's similar to mine. However, it is iron horse statue clock. It doesn't have the open escapement. It's sold for about $175, and I believe it's iron, cast iron. It's not marble. If they don't show me a picture at the bottom on the clock, but again, it's not the exact same clock as mine. Different movement also. This is my movement. That's that movement. Totally different movements. You can see this has got a big cutaway version on it. My movement doesn't. When you get into the open escapements of clocks, they sell for a higher price. There's an open escapement right here. It sold for $257. Well, $263, give or take. Open escapement. Open escapement, but it's a crystal regulator. Like I said, the open escapement clocks, they're more valuable because people can see them running from the front. Here's an open escapement clock, sold for $340. No statue on top. Let's see what the movement looks like. The same stop movement as the clock that I have. And let's see what this says. My friend has got an Ansonia book. He sent me a picture. Unfortunately, Facebook changes all the frickin' time. And used to, you'd be able to search in Messenger and search for keywords like Ansonia, and it would show you every message that you and your friend talked about that has the word Ansonia in it. But Facebook has changed, and now I can't search through Messenger on my computer. It sucks. I hate when they change things. Leave it alone. If it's not broken, don't try to fix it. Another open escapement clock sold for $770. But like I said, another open escapement clock sold for about $150. No statue on top. But like I said, out of all my years collecting, this is the only one I've ever seen with a bird dog, with that type of bird dog on top of the movement. And my friend told me that his mentor has one in his possession, but it's a different color. He says his is brown. I might not ever see another one like mine. And rarity increases the price. This one here, smaller in version, sold for about $340. Open escapement. Cast iron. Again, mine is marble. The 1904 catalog, you've seen me show it before. The clock movement has got a patent date of 1881. I want you to listen. These cases have been imported direct from France and are fitted with the highest grade American movements. They are handsome, rich, and elegant. Anyway, these all have Ansonia movements in them, and they are marble clocks, genuine French black marble clocks. Remember, I told you at the beginning of this video, marble, black slate, whatever you want to call it. I was told that years ago, marble black slate was too expensive, or we couldn't get it that easily here in the States, so a lot of clock makers shined up wood to make it look like slate clocks. Anyway, Ansonia had these imported from France and put their movements in it. That's very well what could have happened here. I had to use my phone to look through my buddies and my conversations. Now, this is from 2 years ago, that he looked this up for me. This was the closest thing, a bird dog with a bird in its mouth. It was dated 1904. settler with bird. But I think my clock is older than that, and it definitely is not that dog. This is my clock. Of course, it's dirty. I still got to clean it up. And there are nuts up inside that you can take the dog off, and you can also tighten it down so it doesn't rock back and forth like this. So I do want to clean it up. I don't know if this is brass or what. I honestly don't know. But like I said, this is marble. And from the book, the 1904 book, it showed that they got them sent from France. I just noticed something, and I want to explain it, but let me turn this clock around. You see that tape with that number on it? There's a reason behind that. If you watched my videos before, I talk about this book. When I was over in England, on Thursdays, I lived not too far from this place. On Thursdays, I would go to this place, which was in Norfolk, and I would put in silent bids. And if I won, they would call me, or I would call them Fridays, and then I would, because I was working during the time frame that they had these auctions. So I would go on Thursday evening, view, put in silent bids, and if I won, I would call them Fridays, or they would call me, and then on Saturdays, I would come and pick the items up. Now, I've got several of these books, and I think I only kept the books on the stuff that I won. But anyway, the number is on there because when I left England, the military shipped my stuff, but they only authorized $3,500 per clock damage. Well, at the time, I had approximately $10,000 worth of clocks. I had to get extra insurance, and I had over 100 clocks, and that clock that I just showed you just happened to be the clock number 38, where I went through Microsoft Word, because that's what I had on my computer. I put pictures. I would describe the clock, show a picture, and say something like, in working condition, this is how much that clock is worth. Now, this was in 1999, 2000. I left in May of 2000. I bought this book by Alan and Rita Shenton, Collectible Clocks, 1840 to 1940, Reference and Price Guide. So I would go through this book to try to find a clock that looked almost identical to my clock. I basically did my own appraisal, and it cost me about $250, maybe $300 to get this supplemental insurance. There was only one clock that was damaged. It was my antique grandfather clock. They built a case, a box, a crate for this clock. The original glass for the dial was shattered. They didn't wrap it good enough. So I had to have my clock appraised again. I had it appraised prior to leaving England, and appraised for $5,000. And I had to have it appraised again when I got to Abilene, Texas, and the local clock guy, he didn't want to come to my house. He said, Mark, those English clocks aren't really worth that much money. And I'm like, I disagree with you, and I really wish you'd come to my house and check out my clock. He finally did, upon request. He finally came and checked out my clock, and he appraised it for $5,000 also. So basically, what I paid in the insurance is what I got back, the original glass. There are places, I've seen some TV shows. That's the guys that travel around. I can't think of the show, but anyway, there are places in the United States that still makes glass to look like it's 250 years old with the imperfections in the glass, but it's pretty pricey. The guy in Abilene, Texas told me about the place. He said that he didn't know whether or not his contact place was still in existence or not. I never did get the glass replaced. And so anyway, that is why the numbers are on that clock. I went through every clock, number in the clocks, used it in Word, and I put it on a 3.5-inch floppy disk. Me and a friend of mine who used to build computers, we were talking about floppy disk, 3.5-inch floppy disk, 5.25-inch floppy disk, 8-inch floppy disk. I never heard of an 8-inch floppy disk. And this guy, he's a Microsoft, he had his Microsoft certificate, and he was a professional clock repair, computer repair guy. But you can't find a computer these days that takes a 3.5-inch floppy disk. I've got several 3.5-inch floppy disks that have history on it, but can't find a computer that takes a 3.5-inch floppy disk. I'm sure I can order an external drive 3.5-inch floppy disk, but it's just one of those things that I haven't done. I got too many other fires going on. Real quickly, this is one of my receipts, and this is the book it came from. The top clock says American OG wall clock. I paid 45 pounds for it, probably a little bit too much. However, and because it's got some damage. However, the bottom clock, a brass perpetual clock and dome, 15 pounds. That is my 1908 Gustav Becker torsion clock. And I paid somebody, a friend of mine, to get it going for me. And he told me, Mark, where'd you get this thing? And I told him, he's like, I was at that auction. If I would have seen that clock, you would have never gotten that clock. But I've got a video on this clock. This is that 1908 Gustav Becker torsion clock. They came, per the Charles Twilliger 400-day clock repair guide, they came with either 4-ball pendulums or a disc pendulum. I would love to have a disc pendulum port, but I do have the 4-ball pendulum port, and it does run. It just that I'm sitting here trying to get the system to adjust the time on it. But if you spread the balls out too much, they hit the posts, and believe it or not, this thing is level, and it hits this post right here as the ball's come around. I might have to offset it a little bit. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and because my mind gets to wondering, I can't sleep, because I wanted to find out where this little lever right here goes. And so there's not too many videos with this type of movement where they're working on them. They show videos that show you a minute or a couple minutes of a video, but they don't. There's not that many movements videos that I found where they're actually working on them. This guy is basically going to work on the case, but he does show the movement, and there is that brass lever right here. I don't think I'm going to have to look at my videos again. I don't believe my clock was put together right. I'm not for sure to start with. Maybe that's why they sold it. But there's that brass lever, and I'm putting the Brocot on it. So when I put this movement back together, that brass lever will be in place, and I just have to take the Brocot out. And so basically, this brass lever has to, that is what it looks like in the picture, okay? So this brass lever has to clear those holes right there. And it goes up, it comes back down to there, it goes up to about there, and comes back down to about there. So that's where I'm going to put the Brocot at. With the Brocot installed, it's in the position where I told you, and now, after I put the movement in, I can easily take that Brocot out. Yeah, I'm putting this together right. The lever goes into the notch, well, at least it was, and then when it goes into the notch, I had to turn it some here. This lever here goes into one of the 2 slots on this cam. And so the messed up part about it is the spring for this shaft here is attached to that lever. I didn't know where to go, and I told you I was going to put Brocot. There's a notch right there, and that's where that spring goes to give it its spring action. It has spring action, but I don't have this third wheel in the right spot yet, so I need to spread the plates apart, get that out of the way of the second wheel, put it where I think it needs to go, and then put it back into the pivot holes, kind of like a cuckoo clock in theory, just trying to get it in the right spot. Okay, so now I have this wire. It's got a 90-degree section that comes off of it that goes into those, I told you, one of 2 cams slots on this third wheel. There's one cam slot, and here's the other slot. And at the same time, the lever that goes into the count wheel, it goes into one of the big slots to get it to stop stop striking. So now I need to put some Brocot to where this third wheel doesn't move, and to where this lever here doesn't come and move on me, so I can spread the plates apart, so I can put the fourth wheel with the 2 warning pins on it and the fly. So let me do that now. And if you don't have Brocot, or you don't want to get it out, you can use rubber bands to hold certain parts in place. So I got the Brocot on the third wheel and that lever. I got rubber band holding this lever down into the count wheel. Now I need to spread the plates apart to put this pin on, and then this one of these pins got to hit this wire right here. So let me go ahead and do that. I still have to put the Brocot escapement on, or the open escapement, but when I trip the lever, it'll stop here. Woohoo! We're getting somewhere. And like I said, I'm going to try to explain this, and hopefully you can see it. When this lever goes into the big notches of the count wheel, this wire that comes off of that same lever, it's got a tab. It's bent to go that way, and it goes into one of the two notches on this cam. These pins is to make the gong work, and at the same time that this wire goes into one of those two notches, the third wheel, sorry, in this case the fourth wheel warning pin, will be hitting this lever right. Well, it should be hitting that lever right there on top, just like that. And so now I want you to watch, if you can, watch the gong. And it's there's a lever right here. Let me move the gong. You should be able to see that wire. That wire that's moving is going to hit those pins as it strikes. And just like that, something is stopping it. Just when you think you're almost there, it was working, and now I have to, the fourth wheel with the two warning pins moved on me. I need to fix it. Editing my video, and I came across the part where I showed you a number 38, and I told you what that number meant. I just came across this the other day, looking for that stupid second wheel. It was in that drawer of my roll-top desk. Anyway, dated 14 April 2000. This is memorandum for PNF Safeway Company, SafePack Company. This is what I had to get to provide them for my supplemental insurance. And here's number 38. American Black Marble Clock by Ansonia, 1890. Has a dog that just retrieved a pheasant in its mouth, mounted on top. The dog is probably made of pewter. Perfect working order. Estimated price 200 to 500 pounds, taken from information described in Figure 8. And I paid 100 pounds at the auction in Dis on 16 April. Back then, it was $1.74, give or take, to buy 1 pound. So this clock cost me $174 plus tax and auction fees. Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying this video. You can see that I know how to repair more than just cuckoo clocks. You have to learn things if you're going to collect as many clocks as I have. And I have broken a few clocks along the way that they can't be repaired because lost pieces or whatever the case might be. And that's why I do these videos, to help you, to prevent you from doing what I did as I was growing up in the horology repair of my clocks. So anyway, I hope you stick around for part 2. And I'm going to load part 2 just right after I load part 1. And And there's probably going to be a part 3 also. I'm pretty sure there will be a part 3, and you'll understand why after I load part 2. So, hope you're enjoying it. Please leave me some comments. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. And may God bless each and every one of you.